I don't have microphones
back here.
And they're working, I want to make sure. I'm wearing a hat. I'm having a bad hair day. What do I say?
Is that a Denny Elsma hat?
It is.
There you go.
It's my favorite color he made. Good job, Denny. All right, we have a bunch of wonderful folks at the table tonight. We got a neat video to run tonight. And Richard's running camera. Hey, Rich.
How you doing?
Thank you for being here tonight. Everybody put on their podcast smiles. And Richard, give us a countdown.
3, 2, 1.
The What's Neat This Week video podcast is supported by enthusiastic model railroaders just like you.
These are anyway.
And by GL Robotics. With over 61 colors of 3D printing filaments in stock, your gateway to new technology. Check out their website at glroboticsusa.com. Further support is provided by Microengineering, keeping you on track with quality products for 55 years. Check out their website at www.microengineering.com. Order from your local dealer or order direct by calling 1-800-462-6975. Additional support is provided by Spring Creek Model Trains, your destination for model trains. Stop in and say, wow. Check out their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. And by Intermountain Railway Company, where the detail makes the difference. Check out their website at intermountain-railway.com. Additional support is provided by Yelsma Graphics, America's leading distributor of quality railroad art and embroidered clothing since 1985. Check out their website at yelsma.com. Further support is provided by the NCE Corporation, the power of DCC. Visit their website at ncedcc.com. And thank you for supporting the What's Neat This Week podcast. This is the What's Neat This Week, show number 230 for April 8th, 2023. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, the host of the What's Neat show over at Model Railroad Hobbyist Magazine, and I am here to report to you that the May show is almost complete. The main body is done with regards to part 4 on how we build that shelf layout, which is a really good segment on that show. I'm looking forward to sharing that last part with you. So tonight we've got a lot of wonderful people sitting at the table with us. Starting over here with Mike Buddy. Hey, Mike.
Hey, everybody.
It's good to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
I've also got, sitting right next to me, my favorite, Austin Allard. Hey, Austin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's awesome to have you here tonight, too, and we're going to talk about some containers tonight. All the way on the end of this wonderful table that we've got James Regier.
Hey, everybody.
James, it's good to have you. We've missed you in a few shows. You've been out and about enjoying the world. Yes. All right, so our friend Woody, that's the gentleman that makes these wonderful train holders for us that will hold your throttles too. You can find those on eBay. He's an amazing metal worker. Wanted me to mention that his train club, the Muskogee Railroad Historical Society. Did I say that right?
Muskegon.
Is it
I'm
Michigan?
glad I'm glad I got your help on this.
Muskegon, yeah.
He said that show is coming up very soon. In fact, it's April 29th, 2023 from 10 until 2 p.m. There is a lot of information that you can get with regards to this show. It is, I think we've talked about this show once before, haven't we?
Probably.
Years past. It's the Model Railroad and Hobby Expo show is what they call it. It's at the Cardinal Elementary School at 2310 Marquette Avenue. So there you go, guys. That's another great show coming up. If you want to, and it's probably too late to get tables, but there's a phone number for the show, 231-670-0751. Talk to Mike Woody, for more information on this wonderful train show coming up.
I got a show I got to plug, too. It's a super train coming up next weekend in Calgary, Alberta.
The
Genesis Center. They wanted me to plug it for them, so I'm doing that, and I hope they have a good time.
That's awesome.
Neat.
Another show that's
Calgary's
coming up.
a nice town.
that is a very special show. Sorry to interrupt you, James. Spring Creek, as you know,
Yes.
the wonderful family at Spring Creek.
Out in
Model Trains.
Deschler, yeah.
Yes. They are having a fremo event to support the fremo modular groups out there in HO scale and HON3. And they're having a show out there. This is the fremo event on April 22nd and 23rd, so that's next weekend, at the Thayer County Event Center. So Saturday and Sunday show, it is free to all that want to attend and bring their modules and set up at this show. This is Saturday from 10 to 4 and Sunday from 10 to 3. We really appreciate the folks out there at Spring Creek. And they gave us a promotional video that lasts 1 minute and 30 seconds that we're going to play right now for you.
I would tell them to come to the show, number one, but number two, look at it from different perspectives. It's not always about the trains, you know, especially with the display layouts that are here. You can see the scenery aspect of it, the construction aspect of the modules to put the layout together, the electrical for the modules. This hobby is so multifaceted. It's not just trains, it's not just research, it's not just knowing the prototype. I mean, any and all walks of life can enjoy this hobby. Just stop in and say, wow.
I enjoy coming to these events that Spring Creek is hosting. They're just a great atmosphere here in our community.
Every setup's different. You know, I don't know. There's no club, you know, environment of it. Everybody's, you know, just their own module basically.
The whole concept behind fremo is the end plates are all standardized, so people with fremo modules can come together from anywhere, set up a large railroad.
So Austin, you saw that video with me tonight before Mike and James got here. What did you think?
It definitely looks like a neat thing. It's nice that it's free and open to the public, and you know, hopefully gets people that aren't model railroaders maybe involved more in the hobby.
Right.
We love what Spring Creek does with promoting the hobby and everything they do for us, so it looks like a neat event.
Yeah, definitely. In years past, they've had this event too, and it's been a very successful thing, bringing a bunch of modelers from all over the place together.
Right.
So it's a great event.
And Fremo's a great way for people to get into the hobby that are afraid of building the whole layout. You know,
Right.
just
Right.
one module that you can hook up with a bunch of other guys, and you know, get the satisfaction of seeing your train run through there. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It truly is. So thank you very much for watching that video with us. And tonight, we're going to talk about the shipping industry, how it's changed over the years from boxcars, right, the PS2 boxcar, to what we see on the rails today so much is stack trains and containers and the evolution of them and the history of it. My first experience with containers, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but as a child, I played with Matchbox cars, and they were obviously made in England by Leslie. And
Leslie.
one of the quarter scale models that I had as a child was this amazing container with two 20-foot containers on it. Genstron or something was the effect of the name on it.
Yeah. It's right up there.
It is up there. It is. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, you
Gentrans.
get B-roll of it
Gen-
afterwards. It's
I should have put it
right
on the
there.
table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, I didn't know what a container was, but obviously it was something that was spurred. I mean, it was strong in Europe. The European railroads
Oh, yeah.
were using it a great deal for shipping.
Well, and as a matter of fact, you know, containers were standard on the Santa Fe Fast Mail Express as well as the San Francisco Chief. Anything that went up to serve Oakland, California, they would run a flat car that was originally made out of a heavyweight 85-foot coach that they just chopped the sides
There you
off
go.
of and put 4 20-foot containers on them that they could load and unload with forklifts. so that they could get the storage mail across the bay easily.
There you go. I know the military relies on those greatly too, because the
Yeah.
one weird thing when I did my military train, it was so different than, like the APC cars I've got here. They would take 20-foot containers or 28-foot containers or even 40-foot containers and just fill it up with equipment and paint them green or Desert Storm brown. Those two colors I remember putting in my military train. But Austin, you're familiar with a lot of the stuff here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've got here?
Yeah, so I brought a 3-unit 53-foot well car set. It's actually called a Maxi IV, which is a Maxi 4. Carries 6 53-foot domestic containers. I know we had talked about the containers last week. The top containers there are actually the ones that we talked about last week from Jacksonville Terminal. Those are the ones that are faded and kind of patched to make them look like they've been around a while,
Right.
which I know we talked about how much time and effort that takes out of the hobby,
Right.
but like I said, we can definitely spend it elsewhere.
Those are beautiful containers.
Yeah, they are pretty neat.
Pre-weathered, just like that.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely, out of the package.
Wow.
And I know Mike had talked about last week that he wasn't happy with the fade job that he did. So that middle one is
Yeah.
faded, I would say,
Pretty damn
pretty,
close.
yeah,
pretty darn close.
It's been in the sun a lot, and
Yeah.
it's got that even fade except the patch panel that was replaced.
Yeah.
And then the bottom two, there's an EMP and then a hub group. Those are also the Athearn version. I think they call it Prime for Grime, and they're both pretty neat containers too. They're
And the pins line up with
yeah,
each other.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great that between all the container
I
manufacturers.
could see Mike weathering this one
I'm happy to
by
let him take
masking
it
out the
home.
blue, right? The dark blue, and then taking white oil paint. But then you'd have to decal it separately.
Yeah.
You'd literally actually
Yeah.
to weather it that way, like this orange one is faded too. You got to paint it the faded color first,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
And then block it out or mask it off and paint the regular.
Yeah.
Right.
Now I think it's interesting what some of the manufacturers have really done with the containers. I know Rapido had these perishable goods containers that actually had the refrigerator units on them, and you could somehow plug them in to or did they have batteries? But they had a sound unit in them so that you'd have the containers making the buzzing sound of that refrigerator unit
Yeah.
and all that.
I know Scale
um,
Trains did the same thing with
Yeah.
some of the
The
CR
reefer
Englands
cars,
and the
yeah.
the 53-foot reefer
Yeah.
ones.
Right.
Yeah.
But I model basically 2015, so I model a lot of the 53s and then 40s and 20s, which Mike has a bunch of. I actually have some of the same ones Mike has with the K-Line 20s.
Being the electronics nerd that I kind of wonder, if they couldn't, figure out a way, using the actual pins of the containers, just kind of plug them into the car itself,
Yeah.
draw up, track.
Oh my
track
God, that's
power
how
that
you
way.
would do that. I
Yeah.
know that's what you're thinking.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be ever really into modeling a bunch of containers because the difficulty about containers, they look great running by in a long train on your layout. The problem is they aren't really that operations friendly. That you go end
if
to
you wanna
end.
drop
And,
off X amount of boxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when you,
Yeah.
yes, I've seen you operate.
Yeah.
I've watched you with all the paperwork and the cards and just methodically all by yourself in that one corner of John Schindler's layout in the dark part operating this industry. And I
Yeah.
sat there and I watched that because I wanted to understand it. And I
Right.
walked away with a good feeling for operation. I did.
Yeah.
No, this is container ports. This is a situation where, even go back to the original days of the 40-foot piggybacks, where they had to have special operational equipment on the layout, like this piggy packer right here, that I think I actually picked up from Spring Creek. This is a neat model. Jeff Meyer brought one of these by one day, and I shot it
Yeah.
outside, so I know I've got good outdoor photography of this individual model for just simply lifting the trailers off of flats.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And
Right.
now the specialized equipment for a container port is,
Overhead cranes.
I think that you brought some racks over here. What do they call those? They're not racks. They
Chassis.
are chassis for the
Yeah.
containers. They stack them up. They've got groups of areas where you can stack them up.
Dupo's a fine example.
There's
of
a
that.
gentleman that makes this wonderful. I hear that, but there's nobody home. There's this piggy packer that they make. It's not a piggy packer. It's a container unloader offloading device.
Yeah.
A lot of different manufacturers have made those that are automated, where the devices run, on the layout to take these off of things.
Yeah.
I don't know what the dog got itself into, but I hope
The dog is right by
Where
Mike's
is he?
feet.
it's just barking at you. Okay.
I don't see him.
be
Oh,
good
there
for
he
us.
is.
We need quiet.
guy.
But the lucky part for me is
It's right here.
He's right over here.
I don't have to model the port.
As long as he's not hurt,
Yeah.
But the fact is, there's a lot of people that do try to do that. They, you bring the train in, the train out, offload the empties. You got the train that's full. It's another different type of operation. I think on the Europeans, what's the name of that big German layout out there?
Miniature Wonderland.
Yeah.
Don't they have a segment on the layout where even the trucks, after the containers get loaded, start driving to a destination?
I think they do have something like that. Yeah, and as you get more remote control aspects onto your layout, I know that's been coming and going in HO scale. The viability of it, but that could make for interesting operations too.
If nothing else, stack train could be a run-through train on your operational layout.
Yeah.
Like when I go to operating layouts, they let me run Amtrak.
Well, right, exactly. It'd be a run through.
That's pretty scary that they let you handle that many people.
Yeah.
That I know what.
No, they let me do that because it's simple. I don't have to pull into
Right.
an industry and start. I don't have any cards.
Yeah.
They just tell me when to go and okay. Yes.
I know at K10's model trains there in Maryville, they at one time had 3 container yards on the layout, and that would be the operation that you run from one container yard to the other and do that. Eventually, I think they've done away with 2 of them and given way to other industries just because of the operations aspect of it. But there is an interesting article in Model Railroad Hobbyist where a gentleman has modeled in N scale a full container yard, complete like with all the container lift equipment and everything else. I think some of it perhaps even operational.
Do you remember what month that is? Because I want to look at that.
It's
now.
actually this month.
Yay!
Wow.
So
Perfect.
it's
that, remember?
Yeah, I think it published in March. Well, it published March 15th, so it's not upcoming, but it is the present issue that's out there. It's in the running extra. He called it the Covipan Intermodal Yard because he started building it during the COVID pandemic. So that was the
God, I wouldn't want a reminder of that.
well, right. But he probably wanted a reminder of when he started building it.
That's true.
A beauty of the container business, another way to talk about operation, and we covered this on a previous show, and I can't remember what it was, but it's when I talked about the container ports that I saw on these various islands. I know that's not connected by rail, but the fact is, on a layout, why couldn't there be, I bought this land, I live in this small town, we've got a few factories that need container service. Okay, so they bring them in by rail, they truck them off to now here's a smaller facility, which is easily based on some of the photos that I showed in that previous show of a smaller container port. That's when I knew it was attainable and doable, in the fact that you can, even at those smaller ports, with the water service that they had, the ships were smaller. Some of these container ships were only 4 containers long in their berth. That's all they could hold. That's attainable on an HO scale model railroad, which was my enthusiasm about photographing and documenting that stuff when I did.
or even one of those inland container facilities or ramps that they like what they have in Shelby, Montana, I think it is. It was on Trains Rail Simulator way back when. I'd play the container job and you'd go through, load containers, and put it on a train. But yeah, there are quite a few smaller facilities out there that might make for interesting
I
operations.
think the only layout I've ever seen where container port's been modeled accurately is the one at the City of Chicago at the Museum of Science and Industry.
Well,
and
there they have the
modeled
space
Seattle.
for it. Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking real estate.
But
no matter how you go about
I think
it.
that's one of my problems is I'd love to model an intermodal yard, but of course you've seen the size of my freight yard, and it would be the whole train that pulls in, and it would be a mess. So.
No.
Now, you wanted to talk about some of these smaller containers on the table. I think there's a UPS one that's kind of, it's not a 20-footer.
It's a 28-foot
Okay.
container. I'm not sure why they made those.
That was this right here, Richard.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting looking.
UPS
Yeah.
It's got connectors.
It has the
20
connectors for the
foot.
20
Yeah.
foot. Huh.
Correct.
So
I know Athearn made the 56-foot well car to support 4 of those,
So,
but I'm not actually sure if those are
28-foot
real.
containers, probably they'd fit right in that 48-foot container well. So you'd have 2 containers, because UPS is going to multiple towns, smaller destinations, that they wouldn't perhaps fill the full 48-foot container, but they could do 2 28-foots.
Right.
And that'd give more capacity than
And then the industry is
20-foot.
even getting better. You talked about sound. Last week you alluded to the fact that on these cars, and you know the manufacturer of these.
Aurora Miniatures.
I call them cars.
with the
didn't I?
opening doors.
They're
and
pretty neat.
Opening
Yeah.
doors,
Wood
and
floors.
full
Those are pretty
interior.
awesome. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Wood floors. All the outside door hinges and locks are all represented, whereas in the old days we would paint those,
Oh
Right.
yeah.
and you had to mask it to paint it just right so it would look right.
Oh, that'd be neat too, and not just for running on trains, but for scenery reasons on your layout. The number of folks that have bought these old containers now use them for storage,
Yeah.
storage sheds and that kind of
Right.
thing.
And then what do we got here? We've got it's a
That's
standard,
a 40-foot.
standard
that's
40-foot container.
That's going to be your ocean containers that go across from
Right.
either China or Japan to the United States West Coast, or I guess they come in from the East Coast too. They have a big port down in Georgia somewhere, I think.
Okay.
Savannah, Georgia, I think.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of those at home. I have a whole train of 40s and 20s.
So you've been to that port in Savannah?
I have not been to the port in Savannah. I've never been to a port that's actually on the water. I've actually been to an inland port that's out
Yeah.
on the Norfolk Southern. It's in Greenville, South Carolina, somewhere out there. But it's exactly what you would think it is. It's massive piles of containers, and it's trains that come in, offload containers,
Yeah.
and then they get put on chassis and driven to whatever warehouse business that's requesting them. And
Yeah.
it's a neat thing. And then for Mike's, we still see those containers brought through, because I know Ken had mentioned the military trains. There used
Yeah.
to run a train, and I don't know where it came from, but it would go to Oklahoma and it had bombs on it for the military. And so they'd have they weren't green, they were like an off yellow, and they would have the explosive placards, and of course they would have like the DODX caboose at the end, but they still run those like today. And they're
Was
bomb
that
trains.
the on the MKT? Because they had Katie had 40-foot boxcars that they shipped ammunition or explosives in to McAllister, Oklahoma.
That's where the bomb trains go, is
They were
McAllister,
the red
Oklahoma.
40-foot cars with the giant.
But
white
they
MKT.
nowadays they do the 20-foot containers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're on the 89-foot flat cars, and there's like 3 or 4 of them, and they have, like I said, they have the explosive placards to
Right.
signify that it's. And then they have the DODX caboose, which is really neat.
Yeah.
Well, I love the wealth of information always at this table. Now, last week on the show, I alluded to the fact that I made this APC train back in 1991, I believe it was, or 92, whereas I decaled every car and every container individually. And I think the cars I used at the time were the Wathers well cars that had trucks on each end. And I took these cars and I cut them apart, and there's an article that ran in Rail Model Journal. I don't remember what year. I might shoot B-roll of this so you don't have to zoom in on this, Richard, because I'm going to describe this as I talk about it. Whereas I took at the end of the well car of the Wathers car and I cut it off and modified it to match the photography that I was coming up with on 5-car well-trained cars. So I'm going to shoot a close-up of this so you can see it, where I took styrene and built the infrastructure on the outside of the car, built a leveling platform, put a screw and a truck through the next adjoining car so that it would daisy chain like a chain and all connect together into a pivoting unit that would not rock on the layout and would track with good stability. I then got a hold of Keith at Plano, and I ordered all kinds of brass. At the time, he was
Yeah.
starting to make well car details for us. Which some of the parts you had to fold up. Most of it I was interested in was the walkways, because it looked a lot better than the heavy plastic walkways that would come
Yeah,
originally
that's
with
a
the car,
huge
painted
difference.
silver. And then, of course, the well cars had to be decaled, first painted, decaled, paint out the black spots where they were necessary. And then came the containers. I used multiple different sizes, 48s in the bottom because that's what the cars held at the time, and 53s on top. And I pulled some of these out of the garage, whereas I noticed that I painted the side sills on the car, all the end detail on the car, and the roofs on the car to match the prototype photos that I had at the time to create, a viable model at that point that when you assembled it together, you would then end up with a decalable model. I painted them all with scale coat white paint and silver for the details, and then went ahead and used microscale decals to finish out all 4 sides of each container, which there's a total of 2 containers per car times 5. So essentially when you're doing a model like this, you're not doing just one model, you're doing 3 separate models at a time into what you... It was a challenge, and it was fun, and it was neat to be the first kid on the block with a train like this before the manufacturer started to make multiple sets themselves. A-Line originally came out with 40-foot container cars, which I remember I used to have a set of on the layout that held all the 40-foot containers, and then you could put 45s on top and still create that interesting concept of cars. The beauty of containers is it does just that. It allows you to create a very interesting and colorful array of freight cars, but yet it's important to pick out at the various eras that you're modeling that you get the right type of containers and establishments and companies that existed at that time, which makes it very diverse, very challenging, and fun for people that like to do stuff like that. And at the end result, I ended up with these beautiful little containers, which there's so many of them that I've made that I've stuck in the garage because I never built enough well cars for them. And at that point, I kind of lost interest in the train and was moving on to something else. So
I'm interested in looking at this because these containers have the number 102 on them, which means they're 102 inches in height.
Okay.
The ones that I have are 110 inches in height. So it's amazing how just the 53, when they started, you've gained another 8 inches in height.
Very
and then you look at Mike's containers and the little small
Some of those
20-foot
really
containers
low,
or the
right.
low cube ones, and now you have these big high cubes.
I know.
And we still don't even have the biggest one because they haven't been legalized in the United States, but in Canada they're running 60-foot containers now.
Okay.
And Athearn just announced those, I think, last month. So
Mike, what have you got to contribute to our container conversation tonight?
Well, these are kind of from the beginning, the infancy of containers that I remember. This car right here is actually from 1971 when Athearn first came out with this flat car in these containers. I've had it all these years. But I got on a kick a little while ago, about a year ago or so, where I'm working on this piggyback train. I got like 50 flat cars, 89-foot flats. About a dozen of them are container flats that I put at the end. And I, just like you were saying, Ken, I was trying to find, when I bought all these containers, I was trying to find companies that were appropriate for that era and that existed at that time. And so these are mainly 70s, and I might even have some of them a little too modern for my era, but I like the way they look. But
Can we spread them out a little bit?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of neat stuff going on here.
yeah, I tried to weather them a little. This one especially, I was always, ever since the Athearn cars came out, I was always a fan of the MOL, the Mitsui OSK lines with the crocodile had the container on his shoulder, and I just thought it was a cool logo, and I think they still use that today. I mean, they've used it for a long time. But I was seeing a lot of them in the late 70s that were weathered and faded like that, so I tried to do some of those like that, just to weather them up and make them look a little older. And then there's a couple of the newer ones behind here. I think those newer ones are probably Walters, and I'm not sure what this 40-foot container is, because it's got a separate roof. It might be Concord or something.
Okay.
that or the old Athearn blue box ones.
Yeah, maybe. But these are original Athearn containers that I got, and these pieces were far and wide through all my stuff, and I finally collected them all and was able to put that together, about 2 years ago, I guess. But Some of these are the older Athearn freight cars, and A-Line makes a really nice weight kit for the older Athearn cars that might not track so well because they're light, but it's an end weight cast to fit right in at each end, and it's got a bolster in it that actually lowers the flat car to a more scale appearance. And then these other cars in the back are AccuRail flats they're all the what was called the all-purpose flat, where they had the slots in the sides with the movable container pedestals, so they could mount 40 foot or 420 foot or mixed like that, because these container shoes folded down into the deck through the slots that were built.
Oh, that's right. Those things have to hold them in place.
Right. So all these are the all-purpose flats that could be also used to put trailers on, because they had fifth wheels down, hitches down, folded down.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, these don't, because I didn't want to go through that work to detail that and then cover it with a container. But
We could talk about this for hours.
but anyway, yeah, I always did like the intermodal industry. It fascinated me when I was a kid. Auto racks and containers, but piggyback flat cars and stuff. But like you were saying earlier, those things really did originate over in Europe. They were carrying bilevels full of EWs in the late 50s, like 1956.
Right.
But I think people respect things over there a little bit more than maybe people do here.
Okay.
And they never did have to cover up the sides on them, So.
It's a fascinating subject. Shout out to Joe D'Elia at A-Line. He really helped out with regards to the very first container train I ever built, and that he manufactured and created the products that we needed to be able to build them, and he continued to do so through the years. Keith at Plano that made all the details for our container trains, just all the different mechanisms, and then everybody got on board, and so many players are in the market right now. It's a fascinating subject matter that I think we could talk about on further shows. So let's go to James Regier. What did you bring tonight? Because I know you've got a steam locomotive you're working on.
Well, that's right. I've got this. This is a Broadway Limited. It started as a Paragon 4 Santa Fe Mikado 282, and I put in TCS Wow Sound, and just as part of the enhancements, I discovered that BLI. They all come with traction tires.
Okay.
The disadvantage with traction tires is eventually they stretch
come
out
off.
and they start falling off. They also offer replacements for them for $10 for a kit. So I got one of those kits, took out the traction tires after having trouble with them falling off. But I also added firebox lighting to this Mikado, because there are so many different electronics that I actually extracted from the boiler.
Okay.
I had some space to deal with and some room to deal with that had previously been occupied by wiring. And I also got familiar with the insides of the locomotive itself, including the firebox, which seemed to have seam lines, that light would shine through. Right where the lines would shine through on the ashtray or the ash dump on a steam locomotive. So I put one LED into each corner of that firebox, and it actually got better results than just having the one LED flickering in the
Nice.
in that hole.
Yeah.
In the fire.
Did you type out those flickers a little different from each other?
I didn't, because I was still dealing with with just one lighting function that I could get between tender and cab. I had to rewire a lot of it in order to get 3 different lighting functions between tender and cab, because 2 of the wires had originally gone to the BLI sensor and the smoke unit and all of that.
Okay.
None of which exists in there anymore. So I rewired them to support LED functions. So yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with how it turned out. And right behind it, this is a Centralia Car Shops. This is a Santa Fe caboose with the wag, which is what they use to signal the locomotive way up on the front of the train in the days before they had radio. That they could just light it up, signal the go sign or the stop, or whatever they need to do, all visual. So Yeah, this BLI locomotive here is really nice. And also, while we're on the BLI topic, they've recently announced stealth for a lot of their products. That's going into their diesels right away, and also starting to appear in steam, where you actually can get them DCC ready.
There you go.
So, BLI has for a long time made these absolutely beautiful models on the part of BLI. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, in brief, is a stop that we made on the way home from our spring break trip to Kansas. We were in Kansas. Allison was working and visiting her parents on the farm. I was at my dad's house building furniture, namely bookshelves, to help get stuff organized and out of the basement to hopefully start up my layout sometime in the not forever distant future. So on the way home, we stopped for lunch in Emporia, Kansas, and we always like to always like to get our lunch at Brahms. And if you get an opportunity for a Brahms burger, Austin, you're going to love it.
I love a good hamburger.
Yeah, but it's really neat. They have this trackside park, and we just go there and eat our lunch, and it's right on the BNSF Transcon, and so you can watch, several trains go by during the half hour or so that you're stopped for lunch.
Nice.
Now, in this park is a Santa Fe locomotive, the 1015, which is a 262 Prairie type. Now, a person on the Santa Fe Railroad Historical Society, also a regular watcher of this show, Scott Thomas, had recently helped. It had actually been his Boy Scout or his Eagle project years ago to do this, but he recently helped the Boy Scout troop do this again. He helped them repaint and restore cosmetically this locomotive and caboose in the park, and it made a huge difference. And we're all looking at the photos right now, which I'll supply. But it was a really impressive restoration job. So I texted him to congratulate him on a job well done. He invited me over to his house.
Okay.
And my goodness, was his house amazing. He had, in addition to, he had a large HO scale layout representing, I'd say, general Santa Fe, including Emporia, but also including Raton Pass.
Nice.
And some of the other sites along the line. Had a tremendous collection of Santa Fe memorabilia and artifacts, including the desktop throttle and brake set from a GP60M that had wrecked on Cajon Pass when these units were still brand new. So it was really neat visiting his house. He also has a sizable HON3 layout in his collection. So it was neat visiting, and he sends his greetings to all of you. So I'd return this, return the favor, give him a shout out. But he also had on his layout a mock-up done in foam board of the Emporia Depot.
Okay.
Now, this was a beautiful structure built in a two-door architectural style, like the Santa Fe used on several stations throughout the line. The claimed inspiration is Stratford-on-Avon in England, Shakespeare's home, and it was a beautiful depot, was modernized sometime in the 60s. That took away some of that great two-door look, but unfortunately was lost to fire in 2006. He'd collected quite a few artifacts from that station, but it also managed to collect the blueprints and some of the architectural elevations of the station, and he gave me a digital copy of them. And I told him that I would try to 3D design this Emporia Depot. I don't know when this is going to come out.
That's okay.
But
start shooting video.
That'll be
I want this.
That'll be a fun project. So
yes, he's hired.
Isn't it like about 18 inches
right
long?
it'll be big. So I'll have to figure out, like, even on this Photon X, or I will have to figure out, just exactly how I'm going to divide it.
Right.
And where the dividing lines will be, how I can hide them best, that sort of thing. But it's an interesting challenge, and it's a beautiful depot to get started. It's one that I've not seen often modeled. I've seen several different models of the Newton station, for example, but the Emporia I've not seen, and it was a major. Obviously, a major depot for the Santa Fe, in that it was always a crew change point, significant service point. I think there was a Harvey House and hotel on the second floor, office buildings or offices and for the division and all of that. So that'll make for an interesting project. But it was an interesting. It was a very nice visit with Scott. So yeah, that's one of the. That's one of the awesome things about doing this show. You just run into all these people all over, and
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Talking about a person running all over, Denny Yelsma is going to be driving up here, from what I understand, with a friend.
Really?
He will be here on April 22nd. That'll be the
weeks.
last show that we do this month. So we look forward to we will give you your full hospitality here at the property, Denny. We look forward to that visit. You're always awesome when you come. Have we covered everything on tonight's show so far around the table?
Absolutely.
One,
I
two.
guess so,
I love
yeah.
it when you guys, we said we were going to do this. We did a little prep tonight. There was so much more we could have talked about the
I
history.
do have one fun story that
There's
I
a-
told last week.
Okay, go ahead.
Our friend Andy Westhoff,
Yes.
many years ago, texted me from when he was back working in North County as a police officer. And he texted me and told me that 2 containers had been broken into. And they just happened to have, I think, throw pillows and Cracker Jacks. And he goes, if you want to take your truck up here and load up as much throw pillows and Cracker Jacks as you can have them.
So you're
I'm
done.
like, no, I'm good.
Did they
But
have any
it's-
peanuts?
no.
You could have been ready for the ball game, peanuts and Cracker Jack, and
But it just goes to show you that these containers can really just haul anything.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah, I read somewhere where they actually, will haul grain back to China. Finished goods coming here, but
And
they
rice,
fill them
too.
with grain and different. Yeah.
I knew a guy that worked for the Frisco, and he was on a derailment in Springfield, Missouri, and the boxcar was carrying flannel shirts. And he said each guy walked out of there all puffed up with about 20 shirts on.
Goodness gracious.
Oh my
Those
goodness.
were the days.
I remember as a kid growing up in the 70s, somebody advertised on TV, Friedman
Railroad
Railroad
salvage, yes.
Salvage.
Yeah.
And I always wondered what that was, and now I guess it's come to full circle. I'm now 58 and I understand it. All right, guys, tonight we're going to take our NCE power cab system. This is a pro cab that we're going to use on the layout tonight because I know James wants to test run a steam locomotive and show us how it works. And Austin was talking about maybe putting together a container train and shooting some B-roll for some future show.
maybe a run by.
Nice run
Yeah,
by.
we could pull it with the
Yes.
the steam locomotive.
engine, yeah.
That'd be prototypical.
Check it out, ncedcc.com, the power of DCC. It's a great system. We use it. I rely on it. And there's nothing else I can say except for it works. I know Richard's just smiling because he knows what I'm saying is right.
Everybody knows what I'm saying is true.
So with that, guys, let's go run some trains.
All right.
All right.
Friedman Railroad Salvage.
Yeah.
I can't believe I remembered that.
I think it was on Easton Avenue, which is now Martin Luther King, but I remember their TV commercials.
They must have just went around.
Was it stuff that came out of containers, or was it actually like
supposed-
parts
This is
after
the-
derailment?
I think
place-
it was kind of like a hoods. They had all this I guess it came off a train wreck. I don't know, but
just wrecks.
like couches
Or-
and
or
selling it in
TVs
wholesale.
You got to figure back then they're
Wow.
fork loading these trains full of stuff, and
Yeah.
things could have gotten damaged just in the loading and unloading.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's do a thumbnail, shall we? Grab
Well,
something.
let's do a thumbnail on the layout, like if we're running trains,
Hey, that's a
Yeah,
good idea.
that
because
is a
people
good
dig
idea.
that
The thumbnail pictures.
when
of
we
the layout
actually
are always
look like
good.
we're running trains.
Yeah.
Well, we do run trains. I run trains all the time down here. All right, guys, so here we go. Just let camera one roll. I'll roll credits, and we will create a nice thumbnail for you for this video.
All right.
Awesome.
What? We did it. Oh my gosh, I'm having a bad hair day. I need to get a haircut real bad. So the dog was squealing, why?
I don't know. I wonder if he was getting shocked on some of these wires or something.
I've been chewing on him.
Maybe so. Where'd he go?
I kind of wonder if that'll happen to Sonny one of these days.
Yeah.
We've been catching them, going for them, but
Yeah.
I guess they all need some kind of shock at some point just to
Yeah.
let